Good evening and welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show on this Friday, the 12th of July, 2019. And as always, a warm welcome to my co-hosts, Thunderous and Stop Spamming. How are you gentlemen doing on this hopefully fine summer evening?
Well, I'm fine. It is a fine summer evening in England. It's nice to have one. The weather has been variable this week. We've had cloud, we've had rain, and we've had sun. We've had four seasons in one. Well, maybe not four, but certainly three. Other than that, I'm fine. Hope everybody else is fine. How about you guys?
Yes, hello, non-believers, others, and so on. You dirty, filthy unbelievers. Where am I getting this feedback from? Okay, welcome. It's another Gin and Tonic show. Welcome to Gin and Tonic.
Yes, indeed. You want to do a little preamble, a short preamble, Stops?
Actually, can I make a long one? Gin and Tonic show, and what we are doing is we don't attack, we critique. We use facts, reality, and reasoning. We condemn categorically any abuse, oppression, slavery, violence. On the other hand, we embrace free speech and criticism, especially factual and constructive criticism. I think we can rightfully consider ourselves decent human beings. And if you want to comment, question, correct, or are simply curious about anything Islam, you've come to the right place. We let the Quran speak for itself, not thousands of people, scholars or not, who commented on this book and its vague and ambiguous sentences hundreds of years later. Don't go to Patreon or PayPal. It's for free. We don't e-beg. There is one quick thing that I want to bring up because I have been accused of, I don't know why, this week has been the week of whataboutism. Now, whataboutism is, just to clarify, changing the attack to the faults of someone else, which is a Russian communist method of long ago. It's used, and this is a definition I quite like, to make anything look similar to something else with a similar moral value. So you're shifting the attention and leaving the original issue behind, beyond criticism, so everyone can do pretty much what they want as long as there's some sort of false equivalency somewhere. Now, let me give you a quick example. A car manufacturer A claims their car A runs 200 top speed. Okay, that's the claim, 200 top speed. When testing car A, it only managed 190. Now, with someone else, car B managed a top speed of 190. Now, I, because I'm testing car A and reporting on car A, am accused of being biased and dishonest and a lowlife because I don't mention car B and don't tell anybody about car B and don't talk about car B the same way as I do about car A. So the point is that I am testing car A, not car B. Number two, the manufacturers of car B don't make any claims regarding a top speed. Only the manufacturers of car A. Number three, the resulting speed of car A is a fact and thus makes the claim was that it goes 200, a false claim. And in addition, would car A be worse if car B managed 200? Would car A be better if car B only managed 180? And in general, how does car B influence whether car A is better or worse when comparing the claim with reality? Is it really helpful telling me that because I'm a lowlife with a low IQ, I probably overlooked that car A's claim was in miles per hour and KB maybe was in kilometers per hour? And what if they were both in kilometers per hour? What does it do? So this is this whataboutism that I get all the time, where I came up with this analogy of car A and B. And therefore, if you apply it to Quran and Bible or Islam and Christianity, you can apply that. And then I think you can quickly and easily see how stupid this is. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much. Well, with that said, let's get, I have posted the link into the chat. So if you're a Muslim and you want to join us to give a different perspective on the Quranic verses we'll be reading, then you can friend me on Facebook. I'm back on social media, and send me a message. I'll try and keep an eye on that. And then or you could do it with stops. If you can post the other link as well, so that we can both keep an eye. And if you want to join us, then send us a message and we can send you a link so you can jump on the show.
Oh, and next week, by the way, we're going to have something a little bit different. We're going to have a short sort of introduction into Shia Islam, so it's going to be a little bit different.
Good. Looking forward to that one. So I think without further ado, let's get into it, see how far we get tonight. So presenting to everybody. There we go. So we ended here last night, so I'll just read the Yusuf Ali version and we'll move straight on. This is 352. When Jesus found unbelief on their part, he said, "Who will be my helpers to the work of Allah?" Said the disciples, "We are Allah's helpers. We believe in Allah, and do thou bear witness that we are Muslims." So that was where we ended yesterday. So we're going to move straight on to 353. Sahih International. Our Lord, we have believed in what you revealed and have followed the messenger Jesus. So register us among the witnesses to truth. Yusuf Ali. Our Lord, we believe in what thou hast revealed and we follow the messenger. Then write down among those who bear witness. Okay, so what have the tafsirs got to say? Ibn Abbas, just having a look. Follow the religion of the messenger Jesus. Make among us the first forerunners who were witnesses before us. It also said this means make us of the community of Muhammad. Okay, that's a little bit all over the show. Jalalain, Lord, we believe in what you've revealed of the gospel, and we follow the messenger Jesus. Inscribe us, therefore, with those who bear witness to your oneness and the truthfulness. Okay, so obviously they just want to jump on the bandwagon, right? So they want to claim they're following Jesus, and they're part of this sort of Muslim believers, because, of course, everybody prior to Muhammad is like post hoc a Muslim. In other words, they've just incorporated everybody prior to Muhammad to being Muslims, of course. And so they just want to be part of this group. Do you guys want to add anything else in there?
Well, he uses the word Muslim, but the word Muslim doesn't appear in any text previous to Muhammad's. And also the word Muslim just means someone who submits. Well, you know, if you're a pagan or someone who follows, say, Greek mythology or Roman mythology and such, well, you're a Muslim too, because you submit to that God. So everybody submits to something. So by implication, everybody is a Muslim anyway.
Yeah, they often respond by saying, yeah, Muslim just means one who submits to God. But I'd agree with you. I think that's disingenuous, because which God, right?
Exactly.
There's only one God that they believe in. So if it's not Allah, then that statement is just pretty much meaningless, right? So I would challenge them on that sort of statement, which I've done, of course, and they just claim that no, everybody's a Muslim who believes in God.
And if they're trying to argue with the etymology of the word Muslim and that it's related to Allah, but that's easily torn apart, because Muhammad's own grandfather's name was Abdullah, and Abdullah means slave of Allah. So if you're looking at the etymology and the meaning, then you would have something with the word Muslim. You would have the word Allah or La or something related to the identity of the God that you're worshipping. Yeah. So the word Muslim is merely generic, but the word Abdullah isn't. It signifies what your position is and to whom you're in position to. So slave, that's your position. Allah, who you're the slave to, slave of Allah, Abdullah. So Muslims can't have it both ways in this regard.
Yep. Anything you want to add there, Stops?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
It doesn't say. The funny thing is, this is the whole story about Jesus, okay? And what I think they're trying to do is they're trying to establish some sort of a connection, an emotional connection with Jesus. And they're saying, well, all you people, you already like Jesus. Well, we also like Jesus. So, you know, if we like Jesus and you like Jesus, why don't we do the good thing and join the ranks of the submitters? And then we're all doing the same thing, and then we're all good people. That's basically what is happening here. And they're just bringing different examples now, because remember the last sentences were all about Jesus, how he was also a creator. I thought only Allah can create, but Jesus can also create. And he said, obey me. So, you know, it's a bit of a mix there.
And I think when just to follow on with stops, because it's just kind of brought a thought to my mind that when you are looking at Muhammad make this appeal via the Quran, or even Allah is supposed to be making this appeal because it is supposed to be the words of Allah. There's no information, there's no detail. It's very superficial. It's very sort of like surface stuff, cursory stuff. It's the kind of knowledge or information that you get from somebody who has only entry-level knowledge of previous scripture. And it's not even entry-level knowledge at that. It's scarce knowledge. It's bare knowledge. There's no detail at all. It's generic. It's empty. It's shallow. It's hollow. It's void.
And if there is some detail, it's wrong.
Good. All right, let's move on to 354. 354, Sahih International. And the disbelievers planned, but Allah planned, and Allah is the best of planners. Yusuf Ali. And the unbelievers plotted and planned, and Allah too planned, and the best of planners is Allah. Well, presumably Allah had planned prior to them plotting and planning, so it almost sounds like they're, without any further information, it sounds like these unbelievers were plotting, and so was Allah at the same time, and it was like a chess match, and he was just too good for them. But I think we all know that he planned all of this sort of stuff and knew all of this way before this. So like he'd planned the game of chess before it had ever been played, and then he sat down to play the game, and it looked as if he was making some plans, but he'd already done them, and the players, on the other side of the board were plotting and planning, but the game had already been won.
I think you've really got to look at the etymology, the translation of the word, where they're using the word planner, because if you're looking at, say, something like post-1975 translations of the Quran, I think you're going to find planner is translated quite a lot, whereas previous Qurans uses sometimes deceiver. And I'm not just myself, I'm sure Stops has done this as well. It's like when you're looking at latter translations of the Quran, they're really trying to if you like, make Allah seem generous and how you can say soft and appealing and approachable. But the truth of the matter is, when you look at the word, because I've got the Pickthall translation here, and it says Allah is the best of schemers. Now that's not quite deceiver, but it is the word schemer. The interesting thing is okay, fine, that can sound like an innocent enough word or translation of what the original word may be. But however, look at the context of the word schemer. When you look at the word scheme, it is always or mostly in a negative connotation. It's never, or more or less most of the time, it's never used in a positive way. It's always used in a negative way. If it's a villain or a crook or someone shady, the word is scheme used into whatever scheme they've devised. It's never used in the positive. So it's almost like the Pickthall translation has used the best possible word, keeping a sense of the meaning without revealing what the word really means, which is deceiver.
Yep.
Well, plus the thing is that if it's a little primitive, it's like a na 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 na. It's telling people, well, it doesn't matter how clever you are or how clever you think you are. Allah is much cleverer than you are. So don't even think that you come close to it. And the second thing is, again, why is it in plural? How many schemers were there? This is always the thing that they're trying to pass this God as the best of all the gods, the cleverest of all the gods. This is like Trump. He creates his own problem, then says, "You see, I solved it, and I solved it the best way possible, and this is the best solution you've ever heard in your life." This is exactly this kind of a thing that's the Quran is applying.
But I'm just looking at the screenshot you've put up there. Is this Stops or Rob's?
Yeah, Rob. Yep.
The Jews planned to kill Jesus. Allah wished to kill their man Tatianos. Who that is?
Yeah, I'm not sure who that is either.
So this is what I wanted to do. Maybe an introduction. Maybe sometime in the future, will give me the opportunity about how can I put this? Muhammad himself claimed that the first, second, and third generation of Islam were going to be the best of Muslims. You can only assume that was based on the information that they had. I mean, they lived with the Prophet and the companions. As they're slowly dying out, the information that you would have on the person would slowly dilute until it disappears, and all you have is basically a written record of who the person was. It happens in history as well. people of around the time of Henry VIII will have had more knowledge about Henry VIII than people have now. The only information we have of Henry VIII now is the information that's been recorded on paper. Yeah. So as time moves forward from the 7th century, we should have basically only the information that was written at the time of Muhammad being around, basically from the first 3 generations of Islam. But we don't. As time moves forward, we seem to be getting more knowledge about Islam and not less, which is not consistent, or should say is out of consistency with every other person that's ever lived on earth. Every person that's ever lived on earth, the further away you move from them in time, the less information you have on them. With Islam, the further away you move from Muhammad, the more information you have on him. And the information that they're getting, that the Muslims believe is a reality and a fact, is all extrapolated from thin air.
Yeah, you would think the people that are closest to him would have the greatest amount of knowledge, would have written down the most, because everybody after them is just inferring or trying to work it out. But I also just highlighted this bit here, which is interesting. So maybe this is where they get the whole thing about Jesus, right? Here's Jalalain saying, God says, they, the disbelievers among the children of Israel, schemed against Jesus by assigning someone to assassinate him. And God schemed by casting the likeness of Jesus onto the person who intended to kill him. And so they killed him while Jesus was raised to heaven, and God is the best of schemers, most knowledgeable of him.
Let's assume that that's true. And I know Stubbs doesn't believe that Jesus is a real person. This is not apologetics about what I'm about to say. Let's just follow the logic through. Allah is still a deceiver then, because he's deceived everybody who believes Jesus lived and died. Because, you see, anybody who claims to be a Christian then is basing their Christianity on this guy existed and this guy dying in the 1st century. Allah has deceived not just the people of the 1st century, he's deceived everybody ever since that believed Jesus lived and died. That is a deception. And that deception of Christianity has been created by Allah himself, because he's allowed that deception to go through.
Yeah, I guess they would respond to you by saying, well, that was a rare instance of good deception.
How can it be good deception if people have misinterpreted what's been said? If Jesus did not die, then Allah has made them believe that Jesus did die. Then that's not a good deception. That's a bad deception. There's
but I think they would respond to you and say, no, Allah didn't do that, right? If we're taking Jalalain here, what they would say is that he just, what's the word here? He schemed to make the person who was going to kill him look like Jesus, and that guy ended up being killed instead. They would obviously respond and say, no, he didn't deceive the Christians, right? They've got the book wrong. It wasn't Allah's fault. It was other humans that deceived the Christians like yourself and others today. That's probably how they would respond. They wouldn't say that Allah deceived you, because obviously you're right. If that were the case and they had to acknowledge that, that would be massively problematic.
Well, that sounds like a lot of word salad on their part, and they're really asking a lot, because you're trying to tell me the Romans don't know who they're trying to execute, that they don't know the man in front of them, they don't know how to recognize him. They've had him for about 3 days before they kill him. This will be touched on later on, because there's a lot more implications in the Quran with the statement that they thought they killed Jesus, but they didn't. But the point of that we're trying to raise here is the word that's been translated into the word planner. And the fact of the matter is, where the further back in the older translations of the Quran you get to, you find the word deceiver is there. And that's the point. Allah is the best of deceivers. And if Allah is the best of deceivers, isn't there an irony, right? Let's assume, I know you guys don't believe in a God, but I do. But isn't there an irony that Islam has 1 point whatever billion adherents, some say 2, some say 5, some say 7 adherents, wherever the figure is, over 1 billion people have been fooled by the greatest fooler of all of them.
Yeah, but they wouldn't say that though. Remember,
stand up if you're fooled.
Yeah, but what this thing is referring to, if we play devil's advocate, and obviously you can challenge it, but if I play devil's advocate, what they're saying is simply that God deceived those people who were going to kill the real Jesus and made that, or not those people, the person that was going to kill the real Jesus. So he deceived the people around him so that Jesus would not be killed, and therefore the actual assassin was the guy that was killed. So that was the only, quote, deception, but, quote, that was a good deception because that allowed Jesus to be raised to heaven. So they wouldn't say that anybody else was deceived after that. It was just, for that assassin to be deceived. Well, that's presumably what they're referring to here.
Yeah, we'll cross that when we come up to it, because
Okay, cool.
obviously we'll. But the point I wanted to make is that thus far we've had 3 chapters, or we're into the 3rd chapter of the Quran, and all we've found so far is nothing that could be attested to. We've had signs presented, but we've not seen any evidence of them. We've listened, we've read articles written by the tafsirs extrapolating figures and ethnicities and things like that about people where they've got no basis to make those statements on. All we're finding is, from the very get-go, a deception and a lie that can only be defended by other lies. That's the point that I wanted to get to. That Allah seems to be setting the example of deception and deceiving people. And it seems Muhammad and his followers later on, that are supposed to have less knowledge, but seem to be getting more knowledge the further away from the event they're getting, are deceiving people with more lies that are extrapolating from thin air.
Yeah, obviously they're going to respond that whatever deception Allah was doing was a positive deception and not a negative one. And obviously that's something that could be argued, as you say. Maybe that'll come up. Do you want to add anything as well, Stops?
No, this just points again into this, or to the fact that everything in what Allah does is fake. It's the same thing with I think I've said this before, with the fake virgins, because they're not virgins in heaven. They are just women who've had sex with millions of people, with millions of men, and they've just been, sewn up again to make them seem like virgins again. So there's a lot of things that are fake. And again, it's the whole thing with the plural. This sentence really is a testimony to the fact that there is no real God and this is man-made.
Do you think that's where Madonna got the improvisation to write that song from, Like a Virgin, touched for the very first time?
I don't know. It could be. Maybe she heard about this, that people are being sewn up again to make them appear. And this is what the Quran says. So they appear like as virgins to them.
Because it's about a woman that's had sex with men before, but she meets another guy, and she feels, because of how he is, she's touched for the very first time. Though the reality is she's not been touched for the first time. Because that's what the lyrics are: like a virgin, touched for the very first time, not as a virgin.
How did we get onto this? It was a Stops. Were you going off on a tangent here?
Sorry, I was just trying to be facetious.
No, I was just saying that there's a lot of stuff that is fake, as is the crucifixion and is the death of Jesus, where he says, well, we made it appear to you as though he did. I mean, if you look at the whole background, if you look at an all-knowing God who knows that he didn't do this and he will not, and he doesn't have a son and he doesn't do this and he hasn't got, why go and afterwards justify this by making it look as though, well, I was just tricking you in the past. This was just, it was a test to see if you were good. I was just testing your skills, if you were perceptive enough to spot that I was just I was just teasing you. This is so childish.
Yeah, but they can respond to it. Obviously, I don't think it's a good response, but they can respond by basically just saying that, hey, it's a test, right? Allah could have done it perfectly, right? But then there'd be no test for mankind. So this is all almost like the celestial political test, right? And Allah knows best anyway. So you non-Muslims are just farting in the wind type of thing.
But
I can see how they could respond that way.
For what?
But you've used the word that Allah could have done it perfectly. But if he is God, shouldn't he have done it perfectly? After all, isn't that his pattern, his modus operandi, doing things perfectly?
Well, this is perfect. They will argue, again, devil's advocate. They will go, yeah, this is perfect. This is a perfect test for mankind. Allah knows best. He's planned all of this out. So you guys are just trying to make stuff up here, and he knows best. So where he's, set this all in motion, there's a greater purpose, and you're not aware of it. So you'd have to provide evidence that he could have done it differently and still made it a test or something like that, right? I'm not saying it's good, but that's presumably what they would say.
Yeah, and I've looked at Platianos, who this was. He was a Christian writer. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's no mention of him here in the verse anyway. But let's move on to the next one and see what comes after this. 355, Sahih International. Mention when Allah said, "O Jesus, indeed I take you and raise you to myself and purify you from those who disbelieve and make those who follow you in submission to Allah alone superior to those who disbelieve until the day of resurrection. Then to me is your return, and I will judge between you concerning that in which you used to differ." What word salad that is. Let's try Yusuf Ali. Behold, Allah said, O Jesus, I will take thee and raise thee to myself and clear thee of the falsehoods of those who blaspheme. I will make those who follow thee superior to those who reject thee to the day of resurrection. Then shall ye all return unto me, and I will judge between you of the matters wherein ye dispute. Well, I don't know why there would be a judgment, right? If there's clearly people who are wrong, what is there to judge, right? You know they're wrong. So it's like a murderer who's been caught red-handed, right? And this is, of course, God with Big Brother cameras there, right? What is there to judge? Really, you're there to sentence the people. What specifically are you actually going to be judging with these people who are, quote, blasphemers?
Well, do you want the Rashid Khalifa version?
Yeah, sure, go for
it. Okay, he says, thus God said, O Jesus, I am terminating your life, raising you to me, ridding you of the disbelievers. I will exalt those who follow you above those who disbelieve till the day of resurrection. Then to me is the ultimate destiny of all of you, and then I will judge among you regarding your disputes. Totally different.
Yeah, I'm not sure about clearing you of the falsehoods, right? He doesn't have any falsehoods, presumably, right? Jesus is a prophet. So purify you from those who disbelieve. Well, how does he need to be purified? What is it that the disbelievers have done that would make Jesus impure? Sorry. What is it they could do?
I think it's at this time of Muhammad's area, it's the type of worship or brand of Christianity that they've got there. And I think it comes out later in the Quran that there is a trinity involving Mary. So already you have a form of Christianity that isn't the Christianity as it should be, so to speak. You know, you have your favorite, you have various brands or doctrines or branches of Christianity. And I think what's going on is that whatever brand of Christianity Muhammad is exposed to, it's a brand of Christianity that's elevated Jesus to the point of being worshipped like a god, as some Christian doctrines do. Denominations do have Jesus as a god. So it could well be appealing against them. That's the point that he's arguing with. That you can't worship Jesus as God if Allah is God. Jesus is merely a prophet. Which is interesting yet again, because because in here there are little clues. If Muhammad is the last prophet, the most the most important one, and so on and so forth, and all the verbatim that you get about him, he raises Jesus. He recognizes Jesus' role as more important than his own. Jesus is born of a virgin. Jesus is the one that doesn't die. Jesus, do you get the point? When you compare the two, he's really still appealing to their sense of reverence that they have of Jesus.
Yeah, so, that definitely seems that way, right? That Jesus is a superior prophet to Muhammad. And maybe you might find some Muslims who will agree. They'll just say that Muhammad is the last prophet. I don't know. We'd have to speak to individual Muslims to see what do they say. Do they agree that there's a difference in prophets in terms of their divineness, for example, or God's love of them, or whatever, however you want to phrase it, right? Do they see a difference? Are they all the same? And, based on the Quran, it does seem that Jesus is favored in certain verses over over Muhammad.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But they will never favor Jesus over Muhammad. They may say some nice things, some kind of, if you like, acknowledgement, but they'll never favor Jesus over Muhammad, because Muhammad is the last prophet. He's their prophet. He is the example. Allah is reinforcing Muhammad through all of this. It is only Muhammad that's reinforcing Jesus, not Allah.
So
Muhammad has to do that because he's appealing to the Christians that he's facing.
But who is it that would have? I'm just reading the Jalalain here. Who is it that would have, above those who disbelieved in, namely the Jews, becoming so? But the Jews did think he was a prophet, right?
No, the Jews totally rejected him. That's
why, did they? Oh, okay. Sorry, I've got that
that's
wrong.
The point, isn't it? Because when you look at the Jews, they remain Jews because they don't accept Jesus as the Messiah. They're expecting someone else to be the Messiah. That's why
they don't even accept him as a prophet, not the Messiah, but a prophet.
No, they don't accept him at all.
Oh, okay.
It was the Jews that executed him.
Yes, certain sect, but I thought not all Jews accept that. Maybe they do.
Yeah, that's why they remain Jews. They do accept it. That's why if you accept him as a prophet, or even if you accept him as a prophet, by implication, then you become Christ-like. You're a Christian. You follow Jesus. There's the point.
Okay, right.
Rob, just read this again. What they say. This is so funny.
Go ahead.
The Jalalains.
Sorry. Let me go forward then. Jalalain. And mention when God said, "Oh, Jesus, I'm gathering you, seizing you, and raising you to me."
No, line 4.
And namely the Jews, becoming above them, definitive argument and the sword until the day of resurrection.
So what is this? So I get to them through argument and the sword.
And I'm setting those who follow you, the Christians and the Muslims, who believed in your prophet, above those who disbelieved in you, namely the Jews, becoming above them through definitive argument and the sword until the day of resurrection.
Definitive argument? Have a word.
Argument the sword. So
yeah, I mean,
if I can't argue with you, I'll just kill you. Or,
yeah, I mean, that's contradictory, right?
You.
Either it's the sword or it's an argument. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah. Especially if you're God, right? You would have the persuasive power to present such undeniable evidence and good reasons that nobody would be able to argue against it.
Why
right?
would you need a sword? Exactly.
Well, there you go. Well, presumably only for people who were irrational or who still turned away. But then, of course, you were their creator, so you've allowed that to happen as well, right? But
sorry, this just caught my eye, and I thought...
And claim people have got this sort of free will, which, yeah, that's problematic. Okay. All right. So that's the raising of Jesus. Let's move on to 356. Society International. And as for those as for those who disbelieved, I will punish them with a severe punishment in this world and the hereafter, and they will have no helpers. Yusuf Ali. And to those who reject faith, I will punish them with terrible agony in this world and in the hereafter, nor will they have help to anyone. Well, what are they going to do in this world? I thought all the punishment was in the next world, because otherwise, if you punish in this world, you're obviously interfering with their supposed free will. So, how that works.
But the thing is, there, right? It says, as to those who reject faith, at what point is this? At the time of Muhammad, is he talking to, or is this a generalization as a threat to all mankind? If you reject faith,
look at Jalalain. They are very specific in this. Because remember, in chapter number 2, we were told that you have to pay the jizya as a form of, what you call demurrament. Now, you are being belittled by paying the jizya. And this is exactly what the punishment is. And this is what the Jalalains are saying here. You are being taken captive and made to pay the jizya. So the jizya is a form of punishment and is a form of making you feel humble and making you feel lesser to a Muslim.
It says in terrible agony, paying a little bit more money than what you should do isn't really a terrible agony, is it? But the point I'm making, but he's saying that 400, 500 years later. So for the first 400 years, up until the point he's wrote that down, what did they interpret this as? And the point I'm making, if it says that, as for those who reject faith, I will punish them with a terrible agony in this world. What's the time period for this? The application of this surah? I mean, this ayah. What's the application of it? What's the time period? Is it just reference to when Muhammad's alive? Is it with reference to the first 3 generations? Or is this Allah making a statement right here, right now, back then, but it still applies today?
I would say the latter.
Totally the point, because Allah can't turn around and say, well, if you reject faith back in Muhammad's day, you're going to have a terrible agony. If he's saying, well, if you are, but later on you won't have a terrible agony, then what's the point of them having a terrible agony in Muhammad's day and not having a terrible agony now? And the irony is, when you look at the Muslim world or the world in general, it is the Muslim world who is suffering in terrible agony more than any other kind of religion or religious state or whatever religious disposition, or even if you are religious at all. It is the Muslim that is having the most problems in the world, nobody else. So by implication, then, should not the Muslims in their agony be rejoicing? After all, this is Allah showing them, attention.
But also, I mean, if I take something from this, then it's again, this verse, if we're going to take the tafsirs at least, this verse seems to again cement that the jizya is definitely a punishment, because this is a chastisement. If in fact, it doesn't mention the word jizya here, but I mean, the tafsirs from Ibn Abbas talk about it. Al-Jalalain does.
Well, somebody must have wrote it first. One of these tafsirs must have made the connection, or they've not made the connection. They've just put it there because they've got to try and understand what this verse means. The Quran's been written down. They're going through it. They can't make heads or tails of what's going on here. So they've got to try and abridge it with something. So they've abridged it with the jizya. There is no reason for them to conclude that it is a jizya. They've just made it up. There is no reason for anybody to have faith, because anyone can guess what that verse means.
Yeah, but that's fine. That's
making a statement that God directed them, that they were under some kind of spirit of God and they were guided by his spirit to come to the conclusion. This is with reference to the jizya, and you know, via some hadith. Then they're not making that statement. They're just coming together with what has been written down, and they're trying to make heads and tails of it. So why should anybody think that what they're saying is they're trying to make this connection with the jizya any more true than you and I? They're playing the guessing game, just as we are now, based on the words made clear, the words made easy to understand.
Yeah, well, even if they are guessing it, and if you, or if Muslims take them seriously, I think what it also shows, that whether it's a guess or whether they can somehow make some correlation with those words and the jizya, it definitely seems to suggest that the jizya is in fact a chastisement. So any Muslim that claims that the jizya is not a chastisement is contradicting, you know, two of the most well-known tafsir editors, you know, authors, right? So I'd like to see, you know, whether if they accept this, right, then, you know, clearly the jizya is that's what these tafsirs are pointing to. And I don't
get what you're saying there. You basically they're caught between a rock and a hard place, because if they go with the tafsir, they've got to accept that it's referring to the jizya, and the jizya is basically is an oppressive thing to do.
Yeah, and it certainly seems here that it's just for rejecting faith or disbelieving, depending on which verse you read, right? But the severe punishment in this world, what is that? So if you take those two tafsirs, at least the other ones seem to be a bit more unclear, then it refers to the jizya. I mean, okay. I mean, maybe that's a punishment. It depends. I can think of far more severe punishments, but that's a separate question. But if you take it as the jizya, then it's clearly jizya is a punishment, right? And I think that's the main point.
I've got to go with Allah, though. I'm not going to go with the tafsir, because it says there, terrible agony. Terrible agony. Now, when you look at the word terrible, if you want to go look at a dictionary definition of the word terrible doesn't apply with the jizya. The word terrible applies with a physical affliction, a terrifying.
No. It's emotional terror. The jizya is emotional terror.
That's not what the Quran is saying.
That's what the Quran is saying.
I will punish them with a terrible agony in this world. A terrible agony. What, just paying a little bit more money than anybody else? That's not a terrible.
The Quran does not mention jizya here. In this context, there is no jizya.
No, that's what the tafsirs have.
Yes. If you take jizya as terrible agony, then this is justified. I can imagine where they get this from, but it does not necessarily mean that this is the only way. It could also be that this is just another empty threat, where it says, listen, if you do this, you will be afflicted with some terrible pain if you do that. Remember, these guys were stupid. They were not stupid, but they were uneducated. They believed these things. They were deluded. And this is somebody who telling them, now, listen, you need to come and join us, because if not, you're going to have terrible pain and terrible agony today in this world and in the hereafter. Remember, Muslims are more worried about the hereafter than today's world.
But Allah is saying, I will. Allah is saying, I will. Allah's going to take a personal involvement. I will punish you. He does not say, I will use the jizya, or I will use this means. I will use my leaders or my followers to punish those who reject faith. He's saying, I will. He's going to be actively involved in this.
Okay, Thunder, then I don't understand. What are you arguing for?
I'm saying that I don't accept the tafsirs, in that they're trying to rationalize it down to the jizya. I'm saying that doesn't make sense when you look at
okay, all right, cool, yeah.
I'm saying that it does not. This is Allah saying, I will threaten. The tafsirs are basically polishing excrement in my eyes. They've got no clue as to what it means. So they've juxtaposed, if you like, the jizya into this to try and make sense of what this ayah is trying to say. So just juxtapose the jizya in this. I'm saying I don't believe that what they've got to say, because they've got no more clues what it means any more than you do, Stops. But let's just go with, or me for that, or Rob's for that. But let's just go with what Allah is saying. Allah says this is a book made clear. This is a book easy to understand. He says, I will punish them with a terrible affliction. He's going to be involved. That doesn't say anything about jizya. I don't know how you can come to the conclusion it's anything to do with jizya on that ayah. When he says he's going to be involved himself. And then he's going to punish people afterwards. And all I'm saying is, well, if people reject faith and he's actively involved in their punishment, well, the Muslim world is being punished more than any other religious faith or non-religious faith around today. So how do you reconcile that? The people who reject Islam are doing better than the people who accept Islam.
Okay, I can't say anything to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously not necessarily clear what the severe punishment is. And if the tafsirs could, or if, quote, scholars can give us evidence for how this directly relates to jizya, then we can accept that. I don't have a problem with it. But what it does definitely mean that if they could do that, then, you know, that would clearly show that jizya is a chastisement punishment. So anybody that claims that paying the jizya is just a tax, complete nonsense. If they can't do that, then this is open to interpretation. What does this actually mean? And as usual, this is just a vague statement, but we would need a lot more evidence to go, okay, what this means is this, and here's the reasons why. And if you're a Muslim and you're listening, you present us with the reasons why we should think this is jizya. Just because the tafsirs say it doesn't necessarily mean that's true. And if you want to bring something else, fine, but just be aware that that's also, you're going to shoot yourself a little bit in the foot in terms of claiming that jizya is just a tax when it's then clear that it's a lot more than that.
And the other thing is, if you're going to make a statement which says, I'm going to punish you if you don't do X, and then you check and you see that not everybody who doesn't do X is actually punished, what is the point of that? So, you know, just making a claim, and this is exactly what you are saying, it's a vague statement which you can't verify. So it's also wrong because nobody is being punished. Now, how am I? I'm an active non-believer. How am I being punished? What is the punishment? What is the severe punishment I am experiencing in my life here? You know, there's a lot of people who are very happy, who die very happy, people who don't believe in gods, and not in this God either. So not everybody is being punished, definitely not with a severe punishment. So this is a false statement.
That's the point I was trying to make, Stops. That's exactly what I was trying to get at. That there are those who have rejected faith from the days of Muhammad all the way through today. They've rejected Allah, and they've had a better life condition than Muslims. And in fact, when you look at the world scene today, it is the Muslim world that seems, under their own people, that is, under their own faith, under their own religion, in Muslim-controlled states, Islamic-controlled states, that are under a worse situation than non-Muslim states.
And before we carry on now, Abdul Lubda is making exactly what I mentioned in the beginning, this whataboutism. Because he says, yeah, but in the Bible it says that Jesus came not to make peace, but with a sword. Okay, we're not talking about the Bible. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the Quran. The Quran says this and this, and whether the Bible says something is totally irrelevant. So please don't bring it up. We don't want to hear about it. It's of no concern.
Tu quo quo fallacy, right? Yours is bad, or, you know, mine might be bad, but look at yours. Well, you are then tacitly admitting that yours is problematic and trying to draw the attention away by saying, hey, look, somebody else's is just as bad or worse. And as Stop says, that doesn't absolve you of, you know, your book being bad. Somebody else's book could be bad, it could be great, whatever, but it's irrelevant to your book. You need to defend your own book. Okay.
And if you don't understand it, in the beginning, I brought an example with the cars. Most people understand cars. It's very easy to understand if you listen to it in that context. Okay.
All right, let's go on to 357. Sahih International. But as for those who believed and did righteous deeds, he will give them in full their rewards, and Allah does not like the wrongdoers. Yusuf Ali, as to those who believe and work righteous, Allah will pay them in full their reward, but Allah loveth not those who do wrong. Well, what is this payment? His messengers, he will pay them full. He will pay them.
Look who's
their
in the
reward.
chat. Ike is here today.
Allah, he will pay them their reward.
I just noticed it.
On the day of judgment. What is their reward? Presumably going to heaven, although it doesn't say it explicitly. Well, they don't even say it explicitly here. Allah hateth the wrongdoers, the idolaters, their transgressors associated with partners with them. He will pay them in full their wages. Yeah, I mean, anybody that reads wages or understands that term, that refers to some sort of monetary compensation for the work that you've done, right? He will chastise them as reported of God
exalted. Them in full.
Which again, you've got to go and translate.
Righteous. What is a righteous deed? I mean, if you flog a slave who's done something wrong, this is a righteous deed because it says flog them and don't feel any mercy. You have to really hit them hard. This is a righteous deed. I can't believe that people, believed at the time somebody who really hits the slave hard is going to be doing a righteous deed, who will get full payment from Allah, who says, wow, this is great.
Yeah, well, obviously, these tafsirs at least are again pointing towards the day of judgment as being paid in full, quote unquote, presumably going to heaven, right? Again, this could have been made clear.
You know what the heaven Uber is? A cloud. He sent him a cloud which raised him up.
Your translation?
No, this is the Jalalain.
Oh, right. What does your translation say about 357?
Oh, this is so funny. Let me send you a cloud. As for those who believe and lead a righteous life, he will fully recompense them. God does not love the unjust.
Yep.
Straight to the point.
Again, of course, it's just another verse about those who don't follow, what Muhammad's claiming to believe, right? So just another one of those 105 or however many verses that point to disbelievers being, Allah, not liking them and doing more than just not liking them, right?
Why can't I get a cloud? I want my cloud too.
Well, you don't even need a cloud. Obviously, you can just raise somebody up. I'm not sure what the cloud does, right? That's just condensed water. So I'm not sure. I mean, it's a magical cloud, but you don't need that, right? Because you can just use magical air.
Is that a flying carpet?
Itself, right? Like, as in, like, just, raising them, teleport. So maybe the cloud just makes it look all the more spectacular. But I think if there was a cloud, I'd probably go, okay, what's inside the cloud there? Maybe, the cloud lifting him up. There's something fishy going on. If somebody just levitated on their own, I'd be going, okay, that's almost more impressive than having the cloud to me. But then again, what do I know, right? I think, like you say, simple people are impressed by simple things and not thinking about it. But if I saw a man going on a cloud and a man not going on a cloud, the man not going on the cloud seems more impressive to me. The cloud seems like that's superfluous and there could be something hidden going on there, right? But there we go. All right, let's go on to 358. 358. Say International. This is what we recite to you, O Muhammad. Our verses and the precise and wise message. This is what we rehearse unto thee of the signs and the message of wisdom.
ALM, yes. The message
this
of
which
wisdom.
We recite unto thee is a revelation and a wise reminder. Okay. Because obviously precise and wise here, they don't use those words over there. This is that I've told you about, Muhammad, regarding the story of Jesus. Now, obviously, they still, saying that it's a story of Jesus. We recite unto thee.
Okay, but this is very important.
Go ahead.
No, what we're going to read, this sentence this is an important sentence.
What, there's 358?
Yeah.
Yeah, which...
sorry. I'm already on the next one. Sorry, this one I just ignored.
Oh, okay.
Stupid.
Yeah, we recite unto you our verses that are precise and wise message. This is what
Thunderous tells us this 5 times every show. This is exactly the point that is so stupid, It's simply not true.
Yeah, but it doesn't enjoin what is lawful and unlawful, because as we know today, what's lawful and unlawful is not quite that straightforward, right? Because it will admit of exceptions, and what do you do in that case, right? And I've always asked the Muslims, right, why is it that Allah cannot provide you with books written that would encompass every scenario? And they go, oh, well, that would make it so big. Well, that's fine, but even the scholars could read it, and then they wouldn't need an interpretation. But they've got libraries full of interpretations. Why not just have one library that's full of all God's direct words of every scenario? All you have to do is go and look it up, right? And you would know what to do in every scenario. Presumably, God has the power to do that, and yet we get this vagaries, right? Have a library full of hadiths or jurisprudence that is directly dictated from God in every scenario. That, to me, then we could judge, right? Everybody goes there. We go, there's the library. There it is. There's no quibbling. Let's go take out that book on that page. This is what it says about this particular action. Boom, we're done. Then nobody would ever have their own versions of this, right? Why not? I plead with you Muslims, if you're listening, why is it that we can't get that? Instead, we got these vagaries. The claim
Who did this? Who stopped? Was it also Sam Harris who said, if we take it that we have one God, what we would expect to see is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If there is not one God but several gods, or if it's made up, this is what we expect to see: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Excuse me, what is it? Which version do we see? Obviously, the second. Who did that? That was so brilliantly done.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure
if it was Sam Harris as well. I can't remember who did this.
Okay, so I think we can agree that it's not wisdom.
It was Dan Bennett. Yeah.
Oh, was it? Okay. You've got a very low bar if you're claiming this is wisdom. It's vagaries that you've got to interpret. That's not clear. You've got a very low bar for wisdom, right? I think I've got a much higher bar. In fact, I actually think more of their supposed God than they do, right? I hold him to a higher standard, which again, he should be able to
Sean Carroll, that's also possible.
With ease, right? All right, let's move on to 59, because you said this.
Okay, this is a very important one.
359, Sahih International. Indeed, the example of Jesus to Allah is like that of Adam. He created him from dust, then said to him, be, and he was. Yusuf Ali. The similitude of Jesus before Allah is as that of Adam. He created him from dust, then said to him, be, and he was. So he's referring to Jesus here, right?
Well, this is exactly the problem. The example of Jesus and Adam. Now, who is what? Because if you go to the second part of the sentence, it does not make sense. The example is Jesus and Adam. He created him. He, I suppose, is Allah, but who is him?
Presumably, they're going to say that would be Adam, because Jesus always was with God.
I thought that Allah created Muhammad Allah from his hands. He created it from, because if you look at the accounts further back, it talks about you was made from mud. I was made from fire. When Allah told all the angels and the jinn to bow down to Adam, you was made. And there are hadith that talk about the Allah made Adam from his hand, from mud. So where is the be and he was in that? That contradicts other statements.
I'm just looking at on the tafsirs, right? Even Abbas claims that it was Jesus who was made from dust, right?
Well, how can he? She was born of a virgin. So that would have been when you get
exactly. There's a contradiction here. Yeah.
So not only does this statement contradict Jesus's creation, it contradicts Adam's creation from earlier statements that Allah, or later statements that Allah makes, and what Muhammad states in the Hadith. All you have to do is go to that point where it says at the beginning, when Allah made Adam from mud. He wasn't being, he was. Allah made, and even Satan recognized it in that account. You was made from mud. I was made from fire. I'm not bowing down to you. When you make something, there's an active, proactive involvement in the connection, in the physical sense or whatever, between you and the thing that you're making. I don't go to the kitchen and say dinner, being automatically just suddenly appears. I have to go and make it. It's the same thing here, or earlier on. Allah made Adam. He made him from mud, not being he was.
Okay, I see what they're also trying to say here with Jalalain, right? So they're equating Jesus with Adam, in the sense that obviously he created Adam from dust, And they claiming that he did the same thing with Jesus, but he said to Jesus, "Be without a father," and he was. So here is how they are trying to say it. They say he didn't have a father, therefore
Right.
he cannot be
Adam
the
didn't
son of God
Adam
in
didn't have a
that
mother.
sense. Sorry, I
Adam
didn't hear you.
didn't have a mother. Adam did not have a mother, so it's not the same then, is it?
No, well, they're just talking about the father part. They're not talking
Well,
about the mother.
yeah, but that's the tafsir 400 years later. This is the point I keep making with these tafsirs. They have to try and fix the mess that this is.
And they don't mess. They don't fix it. They make it even worse.
They make it exactly. We keep going back to the tafsirs, and all the tafsirs do is make it even a bigger mess. And it's already a big mess, and they're just spraying air freshener on this. This is dog excrement, and they're coming along spraying air freshener on it, thinking, no, you can't smell it. The smell's all gone. Well, you don't have to be blind to see that after a while the smell will disappear and you'll be back to the excrement again. So after you've worked out the tafsirs, don't know what they're talking about, you still have to come back to the book made clear, the book made easy to understand, and even within itself, it contradicts itself because Adam was made from mud.
Okay, and Ike also makes a good point, because if the him in the first part of the second sentence, no, the first part of the second part is the him. If him is Adam, what if he is Jesus? Maybe Jesus created him because remember, Jesus can also create.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, it's not clear, but if
No,
yeah,
but
I mean,
Rob,
if
you know that it gets even worse, because look at what all the tafsirs are saying. Be without a father, and he was. But grammatically, it's different. Ibn Abbas is saying it the right way, because in the grammar in 359, it doesn't say be and he was. It says be and he is.
okay, what's the difference? Sorry, I'm missing.
It's a grammatical error.
Which is a grammatical error?
The way it's written in the Quran.
Be and he was, be and he was.
Well, that's not what it says. It says be and he is.
Okay, created him from dust. Then he said to him, be, and he was. I mean, that's what it's saying in the root thing here. So what's correct? The
It's
root
is.
thing?
Fayakunu means is, not was. It's not past.
Okay, so if they got this wrong as well, then the root thing is wrong.
Yes.
Okay, what's the implication of that? I'm not seeing whether it's
No,
is
it's
or
just
was.
a grammatical mistake. It's just it's one of the many grammatical mistakes in the Quran, where they mix up plurals and singulars, and they mix all sorts of things. So in this case, it's be and he is instead of be and he was.
Okay, but I think that the big point is that they're claiming that it was just through the word be, and he sort of was created right from dust.
Okay, so the contents is, okay, what we are seeing here is several things. Number one, it's very confusing the way that it's written. It could have been written, I mean, you and I would be able to write this much clearer. The second thing is that from the contents, it is false, because there's a contradiction here, because it's contradicting other sentences in the Quran, and the grammar is wrong as well. So this is one of the sentences, one of the most important sentences in the Quran, and everything about it is wrong. And why it is so important is because the first prophet of mankind is Adam. And because Adam was created first, special care and attention was given by God, the creator, to this Adam creature. And the same applied to Jesus. This is why Jesus, even though the Quran says all the prophets are treated the same, this is why Jesus has a special place in Islam. Even though it's not Jesus, it's actually Isa. And there's as we said last time, 1,500 years between them. So but still, this sentence is one of the key sentences in the Quran when it comes to Jesus, and the way that the whole the spiritual side is rotating around this Jesus character.
Okay, well, there you have it. Remember 359. Good. Let's go on to 360. Very short one. Sahih International. The truth is from your Lord, so do not be among the doubters. Yusuf Ali. The truth comes from Allah alone, so be not of those who doubt. Well, I mean, that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, but you can see how wrong it is, because the truth is something that the truth is only what you can compare to reality. And there's so many things in the Quran that when you compare it to reality, it's wrong.
Truth is, there's a true fact from your Lord that Jesus was not Allah.
Okay.
His son.
They are now going particularly for Jesus, not in general.
Yeah. Because I guess it's still on Jesus, so that's what they're doing there. I said, take care not to suppose that I have associates and partners. Here's where they sort of probably get this from, although he said that elsewhere in the Quran anyway. So they're sticking with Jesus specifically. Yeah, but again, like you say, the truth is just a claim, right?
Yeah.
We need more than that. Well, some of us do anyway, that think about these things. Okay, 361. Sai International. Then whoever argues with you about it after this knowledge has come to you, say, come, let us call our sons and your sons, our women and your women, ourselves and yourselves. Then supplicate earnestly together and invoke the curse of Allah upon the liars among us. Yusuf Ali. If anyone disputes in this matter with thee, now after full knowledge has come to thee, say, come, let us gather together, our sons and your sons, our women and your women, ourselves and yourselves. Then let us earnestly pray and invoke the curse of Allah on those who lie. Okay, well, if this is an injunction on how to reason for Muslims, I can see why reasoning with many of the Muslims that I've spoken to is so incredibly poor. I mean, this is just such an irrational statement, right? If somebody's going to argue with you, you are going to present your reasons and evidence, and if it comes from God, it should be overwhelming to the rational brain. But instead, you're going to come together, invoke a prayer of some sort, as if that's somehow evidence of something, and then invoke a curse on those who disbelieve or those who quote lie. Well, you've got to demonstrate the other person's lying, right? And just claiming you have the truth without demonstrating that obviously is a vacuous statement. And again, one would expect Allah to know this, right?
And also, what's irony is that that women are called into this discussion because women are supposed to be mentally and spiritually deficient in religion. So why would you ask people who are stupid in religion to discuss this matter?
They can help praying.
Now, what does that help, though?
Well, prayer helps all the time. Come on, people.
But it doesn't help with a rational argument, does it? Unless what they mean is you're going to meditate and somehow you're going to get a rational argument. But if that were the case, you would need to invoke a curse, right? You could just demonstrate it with overwhelming reason and logic and evidence, right? And the other person
but he doesn't want to. Remember, he is a kuffar. He is somebody who's covering the truth. He will not see the truth. His heart is hardened. He is deaf, blind, and dumb. So he can't. So the only thing that we can do now is to pray and let him get cursed.
But even if it wasn't for him, remember, you've got other people who will be reading this. Presumably, Allah knew that we'd be sitting and reading this, and every other Muslim and many other commentators, etc. Right? So you could still have made an example in the sense of, okay, his heart is hardened, but here's what would be evidence to the rational, critical thinking mind. ... Right? And present that, because that then would be this. Then you could say, okay, this guy's been used as a test, right? We know he's not going to change. But he's there to bounce this idea off, and we're going to give you all the reasons. We know it's not going to change his mind, but all these reasons we're now going to give you instead of a curse is going to change everybody else's mind.
Rob, come on. As soon as you bring logics in, Islam loses.
Oh, it certainly seems that way, but that's why I say that's a verse like this is certainly an indication of the poor reasoning that I hear from people. It's what you've always said, Stops, right? They're taught what to think, i.e. follow these words, and not how to think, right? The critical thinking, the rationality, for many of them is just not something that they've learned. And it's harder as you get older, right? It takes more there's more neuroconnectors. You learn best when you're young. I can see it with my kids, etc. They learn exceptionally well at a young age, and it's unless you keep doing it all the time, right? It's like a muscle you exercise in the gym. We become a bit lazy as we get older, and we don't learn so well, right? So if you don't get this critical thinking early in life, it's much harder to try and invoke it later on. So,
but I mean, also, what is a curse of Allah? There are blessings of Allah, which nobody has been able to explain to me so far. So what is the curse of Allah? How is it? Can you just say, well, it's the opposite of a blessing? And blessing, I don't know what it is. I've never been really in a position to understand what the hell theists are talking about when they use these words.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the curse is. Think about it. We'll come back to you. The jurors know that this is the prophet. They left him and departed when they see the prophet. This almost looks a bit like a tafsir, but anyway, when I saw they refrained from this mutual appreciation, made peace with the prophet on the condition that they pay the jizya, according to Ibn Abbas. Had they set out and performed the mutual cursing, they would have gone home and found neither possessions nor family. It was also reported they set out with this intention. So who knows exactly what the curse is? I mean, somehow again, paying the jizya comes up here, but it's not clear what this supposed curse is. Presumably, you could always link it to, hey, they're going to hell, but they're going there anyway. So I'm not sure that would be sufficient, right? Presumably, the curse would have some effect in this world because they're going to be judged afterwards. So no curse would be effective in the afterlife anyway.
Exactly, that would be my expectation too, and that's why I don't understand it. Exactly, that's why.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that there's anything in here that talks about what.
So now the severe punishment and the curse are the same thing, which is jizya.
Sued for peace, accepting to pay the poll tax jizya. Okay, it talks about it again. Well, if that's the curse, again, even if we could somehow link this to jizya, right? Because it doesn't say explicitly in the Quran itself, but even if you could link this, right? Again, this is just more evidence that jizya is not simply a tax, right? It's a curse, it's a punishment, etc., right? So anybody that invokes this and uses that word, they are, if you're following the Quran accurately in Surah 3, between 359 and 361, you are punishing or cursing the person by getting them to perform this action, if indeed the jizya is what is meant there. But even that's problematic, right? Or questionable. Anybody would add anything else, or shall we go on to the next one?
Go on to the next one.
Okay. 362. Sahih International. Indeed, this is the true narration, and there is no deity except Allah, and indeed Allah is the exalted in might, the wise. Yusuf Ali. This is a true account. There is no God except Allah, and Allah is indeed the exalted in power, the wise. Well, obviously that's just a claim, right? And I guess it comes at the end of this, claiming that he's given you knowledge and reminding you that he's indeed wise. If any one of the three of us, or indeed anybody else who's listening that has critical thinking were there, I mean, apart from, assaulting us physically, I think Muhammad would, unless God came down to rescue him, we wouldn't be doing it to make him look a fool, but he would just end up looking incredibly foolish with making all these sort of statements, right? Because any of us would ask him some of these questions, and at this stage, he'd have presumably some other rambling sentence, a bit like some people I've heard online, right? So,
I would just be executed for being critics of his.
Yeah, very likely, right? Because if you can't answer something, then I've got to shut you up, right? But again, if you had the power of God, you'd have these rational, superbly good responses that only could come from God, right? Especially if you're, an illiterate sort of merchant floating about. But instead,
and the other thing is what always bothers me, really this bugs me. it really it constantly says there's no God but God. Well, if there is only one God, why the fuck would you constantly have to, I don't know, repeat this? If there is only one of a kind, if there is, there's only one Mona Lisa. Okay, this is unique. There is no other Mona Lisa. So you will never hear anybody say there is no Mona Lisa except the Mona Lisa, because there is only one. If there were only one God, then you wouldn't have to constantly repeat it, because everybody would know, well, there is only one. It's only when there are several gods that you're trying to make people believe that there is one, and you have something to hide, that's when you would repeat this all the time. And this is what is happening here. It's being repeated like every couple of sentences.
Yeah, and again, one of the reasons possibly why is because, this stuff's here, right here, is talking about Jesus having nothing to do with divinity and ought not be worshipped just by virtue of the disengagement of his essence, whatever that's supposed to mean. Presumably meaning
Exactly.
he was created
So
from dust.
again,
So,
this is just apologetics. You're trying to apologize that there are other gods, but you are saying no, there isn't. No, there's only one God. Now, of course, there's other gods. No, there isn't. This sounds like a Monty Python sort of sketch.
well, I think it's, as I think you both of you have said on previous occasions as well, it's a reminder that Jesus is not God and that only God is God, which obviously is a trivially tautologous statement. But the bigger point is that, hey, Jesus is not divinity, right? So possibly that's what it refers to be whenever Jesus is mentioned, or it could be on other occasions, right? Just reminding them that there's only this one God, because they always encounter these pagans or Christians or anybody else who claims that there's more than one quote unquote God type of thing. So maybe that's part of it as well, just a reminder. But it does become tedious, right? And once you've said it once, it should be there, right? But this whole thing being a true account, right? That hasn't been demonstrated, right? So you can keep making these claims, and to the gullible and those that are not paying attention, if you make one claim and then you back it up by just saying another claim on top of that, if you say enough of that, some people's minds are easily overwhelmed, and they go, oh, well, that's good enough. He's given me a reason. Now, all he's done is made another claim on top of the previous claim, right? That's not acceptable.
Yeah, but think of it this way as well, Rob. But I, not doing apologetics here, right? But Jesus being God is not an issue with the Bible anyway, because it's quite clear he's not. However, going along with that, who else is he appealing to by saying Jesus is not God because of those Christians who believe Jesus is God? Who else is going to go along with him on that one?
Yeah, obviously the Jews, right? So he wants to get them on side, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's going to help his curry favor with the Jews more so.
Yeah. And again, I'm not sure if we remember or if there's to whom he's speaking at the moment, but presumably it is the Jews and or the quote unquote people of the book. So maybe that is part of what this is all about as well.
But the Jews don't have to be there; they'll just hear word of mouth what he's been saying, anyway.
Yeah.
And that's why this is quite funny, because I'm asking Muslims, can you tell me anything that is true, that is correct, that is justifiably, verifiably correct in the Quran? And the knee-jerk reaction every single time, without exception, is everything. Even though I'm saying, can you give me one single example of anything that is correct in the Quran? They always reply with everything.
Name one.
And then when I say, give me one example, then they can't. But they first go, everything. This is without exception. Everybody does this. It's like a knee-jerk reaction, because it's the true account. It is true because I've been told in the Quran that it is true. And if the Quran says it's true, it must be true because the Quran says so.
Yeah, well, that's what they've been told, right? So they repeat what they've heard, right?
Yeah.
They've not looked into any of this themselves. It's like,
but they can't think. If I'm confronting them with something and I'm saying, okay, can you please think? No, they can't. They can only repeat, this is it, everything is correct because this is what it says here in 362. This is the true account. And if it says so, there it goes. There's no other. If paragraph 1, everything is correct. Paragraph 2, if it's not incorrect, apply paragraph 1. Finished.
Yeah. Well, we're looking, I think if you're listening, we're looking for better reasons and actual evidence rather than just claims on top of each other, right? Stacking claims doesn't make your argument any more valid. It's just more claims.
And Shomi is asking a very good question. Why does it say even in chapter 3, Al-Imran, the family of Imran? It should be Al-Imran is the Imran. Okay, so that's it. It doesn't, why would it be the family? And this is exactly why we're looking at this, because Imran has the family which is being mentioned in the Bible and therefore being copied into the Quran as the father of Moses and Aaron. And of course, the father of Mary. And Mary is the mother of Jesus or Isa. And therefore, it's the family of Imran which is being spoken about here. And the funny thing is, again, here they are attributing Isa into the family or to the family of Imran, which of course is over 1,000 years removed. So it's an anachronism here as well.
Okay, let's go to 363. Sai International. But if they turn away, then indeed Allah is knowing of the corrupters. Yusuf Ali. But if they turn back, Allah hath full knowledge of those who do mischief. So the true account, blah, 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 blah. Yep. But if they turn back, so they again are the disbelievers. If they turn away from joining the Prophet in invoking Allah's curse on those who lie about him, who are the corrupters, Christians of Najran.
Najran. So this is the context now, yeah.
If they turn their backs, rejecting faith, assuredly God knows the agents of corruption and requite them. Will be placed, blah, blah, blah. Okay, right. Not a lot there.
Well, we know what happens to mischievous.
Yeah, well, obviously there's a curse, but we don't know what this curse is and how this is, it has to be a curse, I think, as we've agreed, in this world, because there is no curse in the afterlife. You get judged and then you get sent wherever you go. So any sort of curse there would be worthless. So whatever it is.
Well, we will learn what happens to those who cause mischief in the land.
I think we have to look at the word mischief as well. It's a very ambiguous. Yes. It can mean anything.
Corrupt as well.
Yeah.
Well, you added both words are stupid.
Yep. All right, let's go on to 364.
But it's a good point. Yeah, we need to keep that in mind with later sentences. Yeah.
Okay. Sai International. Say, O people of Scripture, come to a word that is equitable among us and you, that we will not worship except Allah and not associate anything with him and not take one another as lords instead of Allah. But if they turn away, then say, bear witness that we are Muslims submitting to him. Yusuf Ali. Say, O people of the book, come to common terms as between us and you, that we worship none but Allah, that we associate no partners with him, that we erect not from among ourselves lords and patrons over Allah. If then they turn their back, say ye, bear witness that we at least are Muslim, bowing to Allah. Okay, so that's obviously where they get this whole thing of not associating partners, etc., right? But this come to common terms seems to me to mean this is like a political way almost of saying, hey, you need to believe what we believe, right? That's what
it's a lot.
No, I think it's a political. It's like a compromise. Let's just find common ground. And don't you think we should both agree that we worship one God, and then we can quibble about which God this is later?
It's even worse than that, because it happens today. And the way that it works is this. When they say let us find common ground, it's common ground as far as the Muslim is concerned. And I'll give you an example. A Muslim will talk to a Christian and say, well, okay, let's try and find some common ground here between Christianity and Islam. We won't call Jesus as a son of God because we find that offensive, but we both agree he's a prophet. Yeah, we both agree he's a prophet. So we won't call Jesus the son of God. We'll just call him a prophet. Then they'll say things like, well, we won't use that name Yahweh, or we won't use the name Jehovah, because see, we'll just call him God or Allah, because Allah just means God. So you'll find that the equitable terms or the common ground is always in favor of what the Muslim doctrine is, and that pattern has been set by Muhammad. So when he's saying equitable terms, he's saying terms that you and I can agree with that are basically on my terms, not on your terms, because everything that you find in the Quran is always is totally opposite. Well, whatever other scriptures are revealed. Now, bearing in mind, 123,999 prophets have gone already forth. All right. So you have to conclude, not because even though it's only referring to the Bible, other books have to be part of the Islamic canon too, right? The Upanishads, or the canon of the three baskets, or any other person that's written anything in the past. The Muslims will turn around and say, well, it was a prophet, but it's been corrupted. Hinduism has been corrupted. It was actually revealed by Allah, by one of his prophets, but it's corrupted now. But let's find some common ground in those scripture that is basically something that is in line with what Islam teaches. Because you'll find everything is in that the common ground is based on common ground with Islam, not on something that's like a compromise between the two. That's how it works.
Yeah, I think that's what common ground is. You need to agree with us. That's what is seemingly meant by common ground. which isn't really common ground. It's, accept what we say. That's not common ground. And to the extent that Stop says, hey, accept one God, that's just a stepping stone. Because even if you didn't accept one God, then you wouldn't have common ground there, right? So
But that's stupid. That is monumentally stupid, because every single religion on planet Earth, past and present, pagan or whatnot, has always taught one God. Even the Bible at James 2:19 says, "You believe in one God, do you? You're doing quite well. Yet the demons believe and shudder." That's almost like a sarcastic comment being made by James there, basically saying, "You believe in one God, do you?" Basically, well, everybody believes in one God. There's a sarcastic tone in that statement. There's no big thing for every religion to say we believe in one God. So he's basically stating the obvious there. Even, the Greeks believed in one God. The Romans believed in one God. Whether it was Poseidon in one and Zeus in another? Was it Jupiter and Zeus? I don't know the two.
Well, yeah, no, I think they all believed in pantheons, right? So I think it's only when you came to the Abrahamic God, as I understand it, right?
Well, Zeus was the ultimate God, wasn't he, in Greek mythology? He was the god of gods.
Yeah, but all the other gods were still considered gods. He was just like the father god, right?
The overgod, the overlord
Yeah.
God. Yeah, so ultimately you did have one Godhead, in a sense. He wasn't co-equal with any other god. And in that sense, Muhammad's not saying anything different there.
Yeah, there's not a lot else here. The one thing that is from Jalalain, though, that we not associate any with him, and do not take each other for lords besides God, as you have taken rabbis and monks. That could be problematic, because many Muslims accept scholars, right, which are their equivalent of rabbis and monks. So, again, I think
Even more so.
that would be problematic, right?
Well, yeah, they would try to say, well, because if you talk to the average Muslim, he doesn't know his ass from his elbow as far as Islam is concerned. Right? But he'll very quickly turn around and say, go speak to a scholar, go speak to somebody who understands Arabic, go somebody who's learned from the school, go watch this channel, go speak to that scholar for $1. Never answering the question themselves. The reliance that they have on their scholars for dollars is almost like the reliance you'd expect of somebody that's got reliance on a demigod.
Yeah, I just see somebody talking about Mufti Abi Laith. I think he's having a discussion with somebody or other. I can't remember who it was. It was posted recently. Maybe you guys know.
Samir.
Who is it?
Samir.
Oh, okay.
Abdullah Samir. He's been on the show here.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be interesting, because I think Abdul Samir sort of throws more softer balls. And in some sense, that's okay, because it allows the person to articulate their views more openly, whereas we would sort of probably go in a little bit more strictly than that. So that'll be interesting to hear. But, once he's done this, the Abdullah Samir show, maybe we should ask Abdullah to get him on here and see whether he can come and have a discussion with us. I mean, we don't have to go through the verse by verses like this, but have a discussion and maybe throw a few more of the harder balls, because I suspect that Abdullah will do much more of a softball approach, which, again,
yeah, but with him you can ask questions like, how do you see Islam, how do you see Muslims as being a part of society of the 21st century? So this is the number one question that I would like to ask him, because he is propagating a different kind of Islam, and his approach is very, very different. That's why I would love to know how he formulates it.
Yeah, but it's presumably going to have the same sort of view or similar views, I guess, to, Majid Nawaz and others, right? Try and cherry pick certain verses that seems to bolster what you say, or make an interpretation that is sort of very out of the ordinary, to go, hey, well, what this verse actually means is X, right? When most of the straightforward interpretations, and if you and I read it, would say, no, it means Y, right? So that's presumably how he's going to do it. I mean, I don't know him that well, but presumably he's saying, no, Muslims need to follow along, right? Just do your version of Islam, but follow the laws of the land, and all that. Essentially be Western Muslims, and then cherry pick the bits of the Quran that don't conflict with the society in which you live. That's, I would imagine, is in some way, and he might say it in different words, how he would respond. But yeah, you're right. We'll see.
Rob, Papi 2 is making an interesting suggestion. I don't know if you've read this. I wish you would cut the show in pieces, half an hour, or half and half. And I think that's a very, very good idea, that we treat reading the Quran as one section in the Jinn&Tonic show, but not make the whole show about this. I think that makes a lot of sense, because I'm falling asleep. I mean, because it's, it's so repetitive. It's the same thing that you read again and again and again, and it's so ridiculously stupid, so threatening, only appealing to somebody who's really, 1,000 years ago, and that's it. So maybe that's actually something we should consider.
I mean, we can do. Here's the thing, though, and I put it out there. In order for that to happen, other people other than me would need to come up with a topic. That's been the challenge, because we've done virtually every topic. So, and why I decided to do the Quran thing. We could even make the Quran shorter. So these shows, we could make an hour and a half or even an hour show, right? Which means it just takes longer to get through the Quran. But if we're going to have something else, then I'm going to offload that responsibility onto somebody else, whoever that may be. If you're a viewer, or if it stops, or if it's thunderous, and we want to bring something else every week, I'm going to step away from that responsibility entirely. And if we don't have something, then we can just do the Quran. So I'm quite happy to do that in some sense, but then somebody else needs to let us know before, the show, what it is they want to discuss. And then we could have that as a topic and do the reading separately. So maybe between us, the three of us can chat about that and see if you are a viewer and you've got tons of topics that you'd like us to cover, even if we've covered them before, and you've got something other than just saying slavery or jizya, right? You need to give us something a bit more than that, how it relates in this one or that one, something specific that we can look at. Then I'm happy to do that. So maybe we can chat about that.
Sorry, Marshall asked the question. If he did, I missed it. Marshall, can you repeat it, please? Other than what's good?
So I take on board what you're saying, and if it's repetitive, we don't need to run 2 hours. And I think, if we want to cut it down to, an hour and a half now, obviously if we have a Muslim interlocutor, then we can go much longer, because he's going to give us responses. We're probably going to question those responses, etc. And that show could go on. So maybe we keep it to an hour and a half, for example, or like you say, we can bring another topic. I don't want to have responsibility for doing that.
Maybe we can hire Hijab to sing for 15 minutes.
I'll do that at the end, because then it'll put us to sleep, right?
I was going to suggest, perhaps what might be the prudent thing to do is, if we have a set assigned reading, like we're going to read like privately, say the next 20 ayah, the next 20 verses, then the first part of the show we'll actually read it. But because we've pre-studied it, we can then bring out individually the points that we found interesting during that pre-study.
How would that work, though? What, read all 20 verses first and then go back over them, or?
Then what will happen is, if you do that, if you read it first privately, do some research on the verses that you think are interesting, and then on the show on a Friday, somebody just reads all 20 straight. Then the host turns around and says, right, then we've read the verses. What points did you find interesting from the reading that we had from those 20 verses? What did you find interesting, Sops? What did you find, Robs? What did you find, thunderous?
Yeah, this is the way we did it with Ike on the German show. Exactly like this. Always
we can do, assuming we have the time, right, to go and do the study ahead of time.
True.
Sometimes I have, sometimes I'm not. And I think the other thing is, we're coming at it as if, we've all read this before, but we're coming at it without the pre-study to read this, because this book is supposed to be a book that somebody can read and understand without doing the pre-study, because the pre-study requires us not just to read these verses, but to go and get other information. The moment we do that, it's almost like we're then playing their game, right? So we're now coming with something, and anybody should be able to ask us, well, where did you get that information from? And now we'd have to say, oh, tafsirs, or this source or that source. So I can see why that in a sense can work. But on the other side of the coin, if we're just reading this straight, this should give us meaning without doing that. And all three of us are trying our best, I think, as most viewers would hopefully agree, to understand what's being said here, right?
I like the way that it is, the format, for the very thing that you've just said, because I like the idea of being a fly-on-the-wall documentary team. Muhammad's revealing his eyes, and we're sitting there picking the sand between our toes, listening to what he's saying, firsthand. That's how I like it, because it kind of gives an idea for the audience as well, that when we are trying to make sense, we're trying to make sense in the same way they would have tried to make sense in the first century of Islam's birth.
Yeah. And with that said, I think we can stop here if because I think if we start to make that show hour and a half, that's more palatable for people, plus us as well. If we have a Muslim interlocutor that joins us, then obviously we can run on. There isn't a time limit per se. And I think if there's an interesting discussion with somebody other than just the three of us, then I think, the show can run on. So if you guys are happy with that, and stops, I know we're bringing you on the spot now. If you can bring up a tafsir, then we can bring the show to a close. Unless you guys desperately want to do another half hour, then I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, we can start to make them a little shorter.
Do you think we can do this more interactive? Because, okay, people are listening. I don't know how many, but I'm sure there are people who would have questions, people who would like to talk about something else, but are simply not bothering because we're talking only about the Quran. I mean, Kraken says, okay, he prefers 2 hours. Okay, 2 hours is cool, but then droning on for 2 hours only on the Quran, I would prefer it to be interactive more, keep the Quran maybe an hour or something, or 1.5. I need to arrange a guest, which I did for next show, okay, but it's very difficult to get people to come on a show, to give us some sort of input, to give us something that we want to talk about, because because of the time differences, because of the different time zones, and then not everybody is comfortable talking about Islam in a topic on an atheist platform, because they know that they're going to get grilled, and not everybody has the self-confidence to be able to handle that.
Yeah, but I think then we are looking for the people that have got that, and presumably there's enough Muslims out there. So if you're a viewer and you know Muslims, you stops myself, Thunderous, we've approached some of the Muslims that we know, and we don't get it, response. And then on occasion we would get somebody to join us. Ishmael came from South Africa, as I remember. He's an interesting fellow we can have a chat to, or Reactionary, or somebody else. So we're quite happy to have those people on. But for us to go out there looking that, again, we have lives that we carry on. We do this as a hobby, and so forth. So we're looking for some viewer input here. If you want to help us make things different, give us some help, point out somebody. If you point somebody to us who's interested, you can get hold of myself, Stops, or Thunderous, and we can definitely have people on the show. For us to go out there looking, and we often get obviously negative responses, that can be quite tiring as well. I put a Facebook post up, in fact, 2 days ago, I think, when I got back on here. And then, so yeah, I've got a Facebook post. I said, is there any Muslims that feel they have a reasonable understanding of the Quran and want to join me on the Jinn and Tonic show Fridays, 8 p.m. UK time, to provide a Muslim perspective? And I got 7 comments, and I got from a Muslim that I've spoken to before, in fact, why do you always focus on Islam? Well, I think it's pretty straightforward, because that's what the Jinn and Tonic show does. And somebody clearly just said what I said here. I'm just reading the comments now. That's what the show is about. It critiques Islam. That's like asking, why did the Dawah team talk about Islam and then try to convert people? And
just as I'm just going to throw that out there. I mean, how about once a month we do a rather than it be like half and half, maybe once a month we can have a separate subject show where we have something a little bit more, because I don't mind, given that there's going to be a couple of weeks, researching something to bring to the table. There's many subjects that I've had on my mind in the past, which I've put on the back shelf because we started to do the Quran. But if there is a need or a desire for the audience to have, say, a themed show once a month or something like that, I've got no objection to looking at my notes and start bringing out stuff of ideas that I've had in the past to bring to the show.
Yeah, we could do it that way as well. That's sort of something I'd sort of be more keen on if we could do once a month. I mean, the other thing we could do, and some people like that, is a video critique. So if you have a video that you've seen, normally between a Muslim and an atheist, I would suggest. Otherwise, Christianity gets involved. We don't want to dilute it with that. So if there's a discussion with a Muslim and an atheist that's under 30 minutes long that you feel it's worth us discussing, That's something that I think people enjoy, and we seem to enjoy doing that as well. So that's something I would definitely recommend. If you send it to myself, Stops or Thunderous, we can have a look at the video, make a few notes. That's something that we can do. We've done that in the past. People have found that entertaining and educational. So that's definitely one thing we could look to do at least once a month. And the same thing with what Thunderous has said. So come up with a topic because he's got a lot of notes that we could discuss as well. So yeah, totally. We can have a chat about that off air, I think.
And please, before anyone leaves, don't you dare leave without giving us a thumbs up.
Indeed. All right. I think let's leave it there for today then. The discussion has sort of got that far that I think carry on with the verses now, probably, unless you guys are desperate to do so.
You are sick and tired of this. Oh my God. How can I get you back on, get you motivated?
Who, me, or you mean somebody online?
No, you.
No, I'm fine with carrying on with this. But I think obviously there's been responses now from different people here. You were saying you were a little bit sleepy early on. Maybe that was just metaphorical.
No, I was actually, because it's so repetitive.
Yeah, well, that's the nature of it, isn't it? And again, that's a critique we can bring, right? Because I think, as we've always said, right, there's very few Muslims that have actually read this book cover to cover and have any sort of understanding of it, apart from supposed scholars, and their understanding is at least to be very charitable, certainly questionable, critiquable, let's put it that way. The rest of the Muslims are just responding with what they've heard in the mosque. They've probably never read the Quran cover to cover, or if they have, they don't understand it.
They've been told this is, I don't know, do I need to repeat this, that Muslims are not actually following the Quran, they're not following the Muhammad, but they're following what the scholars are saying. So they're actually following a human being who tells them what Muhammad says, what it says in the Quran, and this is not a good way of doing it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Muhammad and his understanding of herbal medicine. Hold on to the use of the black seeds, for in it is healing for all diseases except death. Sahih Bukhari 751, 592.
Yep. And
let's take a second one. Same thing. Eating 7 dates. Okay. Narrated said, Allah's apostle said, he who eats 7 ajwa dates every morning will not be affected by poison or magic on the day he eats them. Sahih Bukhari 765, 356.
There we go. BJ is just saying here he misses the news segments. That's something we can incorporate, right? I've actually stopped doing the crazy comments. I don't know if people found that entertaining or educational, because it gives you a view into some of the commentators that are out there and the mindsets, right? And we're just looking at different comments, right? To see.
I thought it was a light-hearted intro.
Yeah.
I actually liked it, yeah.
I think we can bring that back and add some news segments if you guys are up for that, because I've got a few sites that often talk about it, so we can bring up some of those if you think that's worth doing before the Quran.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to do that I've always sort of like, it's just something someone's just said there about, Muslims rely on their scholars for dollars more than they do Allah and Muhammad, and I've made that comment before because I actually watch Peace TV, the Huda channel, and Asim al-Hakim and others, not purely so that I can glean what their scholars are teaching and then bring it to people. Well, this is the official line from your Muslim scholars for dollars, like the drinking of camel urine, or the dipping of the fly in the food because in the one wing's the disease and the other's cure, and actually bring those videos to the channel, play them, and then just discuss those things of what their scholars are actually teaching.
Yeah, we could definitely do that, especially if the videos are relatively short, right?
Yes, they are, yeah.
Yeah.
Or the ruling on masturbation, for instance, just to make it light-hearted every now and again.
Yeah, but then we're going to be accused of low-hanging fruit and
are these people seen as reasonable scholars, or?
Yeah, these are serious. Asim al-Hakim, Peace TV.
Yes, but they look stupid.
But if that's what they're discussing, I mean, then it has to be taken seriously. I mean, and also, should you enter the bathroom with your left foot or your right foot?
Yeah.
And people don't realize this is what is taught in their Islamic schools.
Yeah, but this is why Islam is a way of life and not a religion.
That's the point. That it's more than just believing in one
Yeah.
God and praying 5 times a day. Islam controls everything to the point of you have no identity left. You know, if
That's
you
unfortunately true.
if you're fasting and you're picking your teeth and there's a little bit of food on your toothpick and you swallow it, have you broken your fast? Really? Is that really a question that should be sent in? And it's these points that I thought one might have been of interest that I wanted to bring out in the past.
Yeah, but Thunderous, then we can go to extremes. Did you know that while running around the Kaaba, and you are, you know, in the old days, the women were allowed to grab hold of a man, and if you emitted a drop or two of semen, then you had to go and sacrifice a goat. But if you had a full-on ejaculation, you had to go and sacrifice a camel. This kind of thing?
Say again.
Yeah, you could find that.
Oh dear, man. Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm lost for words. You've got me on that one.
Yeah, I mean,
This is
you-
how
you could do
ridiculous it
that.
gets. This is
You could do that, but it depends whether, you know, how much of it.
It's an idea. I'm just putting something out there that
Yeah.
I have a repertoire of or a deposit of videos that might be of interest to not just the non-Muslim audience, but also to the Muslim audience. Like, this is what your religion teaches. This is what your scholars teach and say. Do you agree with this? And if you don't, can you explain from the Quran and Hadith why you would say that this scholar is someone that you reject? What they're saying is something you reject, and who are you to reject it?
okay. Let's just try and lighten it up a bit. Let's try to have different segments, you know, to keep up the attention span, not to get too monotonous, not to, you know, go through the same thing all over Quran tafsir, Quran tafsir. We can also speed it up a bit. We don't have to go to the tafsirs every single time, you know, just to be, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Precise
Well,
or
I'm just trying to see how they made sense of some of these things.
or thorough, yeah, but how thorough do you want to get all the time? I mean, some of the things are really, really shitty. I mean, come on. If there's something interesting, I agree. Then we should go and look at it. But now to read for the 15th time, there's only one God but Allah, and you need to believe it or else. You know, then it's a bit, yeah. Gin and tonic mixer. That's a very good thing. Yeah, we should mix it up a bit.
All right, I think we can have a chat about that offline.
Yeah, and we can look if people. I mean, what I always like doing is reacting to the people in the chat. If there's somebody there with a topic or something, with an idea, with a question or something, we can always take a break from the Quran, do this a bit, then go back or have a different topic. If there's somebody, you know, just to make it a little bit lighter, not just this. So yeah.
All right, we'll have a chat about that.
Okay, but by the way, Rob, we need to seriously talk about getting onto Discord, how this is going to work.
Yes, we've only got a few weeks left, and the webcam thing that came up
2 weeks.
is not going to work. So, all right, let's have a chat about that offline. All right, guys, Thank you so much. Thank you to all the viewers. We'll be back next Friday.
Thank you. See you next week.
From August, we won't be doing it in the Hangout format as we currently do. We will find a way to do this because YouTube is in fact closing down Hangouts in the format that we're currently using, where you have panelists together. The only thing you can do in future is something called webcam, where you are the only speaker. You can still have a live chat, but you can't invite people in, and that's obviously not going to work for us and many others. So there are a variety of options. We're looking at something at the moment, and we'll obviously have to have that in place by August. So with that said, we'll chat about that offline as well. Thank you to co-hosts Thunderous and Stop Spammy. Thank you to all the viewers, and we will see you.
Thumbs up. Thumbs up.
Please do give us a like. Thanks, everybody, and good night.
Good night.